Hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Reading Little Blue Books out loud while stoned. In this video, we're going to do part 2 of Little Blue Book number 933, and it is titled The Skeleton in the Closet, written by Clarence Darrow. Copyright 1899. So apparently, Clarence Darrow wrote this in 1899, and then he gave permission for it to be reprinted to the Little Blue Book Company. So, here we go. And if you're wondering who Clarence Darrow is, refer to video 1, part 1. I gave a little explanation of who he was. Okay, here we go. The Skeleton in the Closet. However blind and stubborn we may be, however long we deny the lesson that the skeleton would teach, still it will not let us go until, with perfect peace and harmony, we look at all the present and the past, at all that was and all that is, and feel no regrets for what is gone and no fears for what must come. It may be that our stubborn, stiff-necked soul will still persist until the hair is white and the heavy shadows hang about our heads. But the skeleton, with his soothing, softening ally, time sits with the last watchers at our suffering bed, and goes, if need be, to the silent grave, where alike the darkest crimson spot and the softest, purest clay are reunited once again with the loving, universal Mother, who has forgiven all and conquered all. It matters not how high we seem to climb, or what the careless world may think for good or ill. It matters not how many small ambitions we may seem to have achieved. Even the unworthy cannot be forever soothed by the hollow voice of fame. All triumphs are futile without the victory over self, and when the triumph over self is won, there are no more battles to be fought, for all the world is then at peace. It is the skeleton in the closet, pointing ever to the mistakes and maladjustments of our past, the skeleton standing there before our gazes, that makes us still remember where our lives fell short, that teaches us, so slowly but so surely, to turn from the unworthy victories and the dire defeats of life to the mastery of ourselves. It is the skeleton from whom we learn that we can live without the world, but not without ourselves. Without the skeleton, we can never feel another's sorrow or know another's pain. Philosophy and theology cannot tell us how another's life became a hopeless wreck. It is ourselves alone that reveals the precipice along which every footpath leads. It is from life we learn that it is but an accident when we fall, and equally an accident when we keep the path. The pupil of the schools may look down with pitying glance upon the unfortunate victim of what seems to be his sin. He may point to a love that will forgive and kindly plead with him to take another path. But the wayfarer that the skeleton has taught will clasp this fellow mortal to his heart, for in his face he sees but the reflection of himself. The wise and good may forgive the evil and the wrong, but only the sinner knows that there is no sin. The charity that is born of life and sin is not fine because of its effect on someone else, but for what it does for us. True charity is only the sense of the kinship of all living things. This is the charity that neither humiliates nor offends. It is the sense that brings a new meaning to life and a new purpose to the soul. Let us do simple justice to this neglected, outcast guest, the useful, faithful teacher of our lives. Let us open the closet door and let the skeleton come out, and lock the schoolmaster in its place. Let us leave this faithful friend to roam freely as it will. Let us look it squarely in the face with neither fear or shame, but with gratitude for the lessons it has taught. It may be that the jeering crowd will point in scorn as they see us with the gruesome figure at our side, but when we fully learn the lesson that it came to teach, we shall need to look no more without for the approval or disapproval of our acts, but seek to satisfy ourselves alone. Let us place a new chair beside the hearth, in the coziest nook, and bid the skeleton take its place as the worthiest guest. Let us neither parade nor hide our newfound friend, but treat it as a fact of life, a fact that is, a fact that had the right to be, and a fact that taught us how to find ourselves. Let us not forget the parents who watch us in our youth, and friend, and the friend that were ever good and true. But above all, let us remember this grim and silent teacher who never neglected or forgot, who showed us life as only it could show, who opened up new vistas to our soul, who touched our human hearts, who made us know and loved our fellow lowmen, who softened and mellowed and purified our souls until we felt the kinship that we bore to all living things. Until it came, we know only the surface of the world. Before it came, we had tasted of the shallow cup of joy and the bitter cup of pain, but we needed this to teach us from the anguish of the soul that there is a depth profound and great, where pain and pleasure both are one, that there is a life so deep and true that earth's rewards and penalties alike are but a hollow show, that there is a conquest of ourselves, which brings perfect peace and perfect rest. Ooh, that's the end of that chapter. Now, the next chapter is titled Walt Whitman, and Mr. Clarence Darrow thought very highly of Walt Whitman. You'll see. We'll have quotes in here by Walt Whitman, and I'll indicate when I'm reading that. So here we go, Walt Whitman. The work of Whitman stands alone in the literature of the world, both in substance and construction. He ignored all precedents and dared to be himself. All the rules of form and taste must be unlearned before the world can accept his style as true literary art. Still, it may be that Walt Whitman was a poet, and that sometime the world will look back and marvel at the mechanical precision and glittering polish that confines and emasculates for the sake of a purely artificial form. Measured by the common rules, Whitman's work is neither poetry nor prose. It is remotely allied to the wild chanting of the primitive bards, who looked about at the fresh new marvels of earth and sky and sea, and unhampered by form and rules and customs, sang of the miracles of the universe and the mysteries of life. Whitman seems one of those old bards, fresh from the hand of nature, young with the first creation, the newest handiwork of the great master, untaught in any schools, unfettered by any of the myriad cords which time is ever weaving about the brains and hearts and conscience of men as the world grows gray. A primitive bard of nature, born by some chance or accident in this old, tired, worn-out world, dropped into the 19th century with its machines and conventions, its artificial life, its unnatural morals, and its fettered limbs. He alone, in all the ages, seems to have been specially given to the world, still fresh with the imprint of the Creator's hand, and standing amid all our false conventions, natural, simple, true, naked, and not ashamed. To the world with its crowded cities, its diseased bodies, its unnatural desires, its narrow religion, and its false morals, he comes like a breeze of the morning, from the mountains or the sea, aye, like a breath of that great creative life which touched the fresh world and brought forth the green grass, the sparkling waters, and the growing, beauteous, natural earth. No one ever fell in love with Whitman's work for its literary art, but his work must live or die because of his philosophy of life and the material he chose from which to weave his songs. It is in his whole point of view that Walt Whitman stands so much alone. No one else has ever looked on the universe and life as this man did. If religion means devotion to that great unseen power that is ever manifest in all of nature's works, then Walt Whitman was the most reverent soul that ever lived. This man alone of all the world dared defend the Creator in every part and parcel of his work. The high mountains, the deep valleys, the broad plains, and the wide seas, the feelings, the desires, and the passions of man, all forms of life and being that exist upon the earth, were to him but several manifestations of a great creative power that formed them all alike, made each one needful to the whole, and every portion sacred through its master's stamp. Quotes by Walt Whitman. And I will show that there is no imperfection in the present and can be none in the future. And I will show that whatever happens to anybody, it may be turned to beautiful results. And I will show that nothing can happen more beautiful than death. And I will thread a thread through my poems that time and events are compact, and that all the things of the universe are perfect miracles, each as profound as any. I will not make poems with reference to parts, but I will make poems, songs, thoughts with reference to ensemble. And I will not sing with reference to a day, but with reference to all days. Whitman's philosophy knew no evil and no wrong. The fact of existence proved the right of existence. In the great workshop of nature, every tool had its special use and its rightful place. The imperfections of the world come from the narrow visions of men. If the perspective is right, the universe is right. From the narrow valley, the home may look old and worn, the fences decayed, the fields barren, the woods scraggy, and the cliff ragged and bare. But climb to the only place where either life or landscape can be rightly seen, the mountain top. And look once more. The hills, the valley, the stream, the woods, and the farms have melted and blended into the harmonious whole, and every imperfection has been swept away. The universe is filled with myriad worlds as important as our own, each one a tiny floating speck in an endless sea of space, each whirling, turning, moving on and on and on through the countless ages past and yet to come. No one can tell the purpose of their tireless, endless flight through space, but still we know that each has an orbit of its own, and every world is related to the rest, and every grain of sand and the weakest, feeblest spark of power has its needful place in the balance of the whole. So all of good and all of bad, and all of life and all of death, and all has the right to be and must need be. Walt Whitman did not even know how to divide the evil from the good, but he sang them both alike. Quoting Walt Whitman, I am not the poet of goodness only. I do not decline to be the poet of wickedness also. What blurt is this about virtue and about vice? Evil propels me, and reform of evil propels me. I stand indifferent. Non-quote off Walt Whitman. The universe can make no mistakes. Every particle of energy that has permeated the world since time began has been working toward a completer system and a more harmonious whole. There is a soul of truth in error. There is a soul of good in evil. From the trials and sorrows and disappointments of life, even from its bitterness and doubt and sin, are often born the holiest desires, the sincerest endeavors, and the most righteous deeds. From Walt Whitman. Sometimes, with one I love, I fill myself with rage for fear I effuse unreturned love. But now I think There is no unreturned love. The pay is certain one way or another. I loved a certain person ardently, and my love was not returned. Yet, out of that, I have written these songs. Unquote. Walt Whitman. This is the old philosophy, ever forgotten, ever yet present. It is sure in the world of mechanics. It is equally true in the world of morals and of life. Nothing is lost. The force that once was heat is transferred to light. The flood that destroyed the grain comes at last to turn the miller's wheel. What we call sin and evil make the experiences of life and go to the unbuilding of character and the development of man. We can know only what we have felt. And however much we try to deceive others, we can tell only of the experiences we ourselves have had. The poorest life is the one that has had no tale to tell. In the doubts and darkness of life, in the turbulence of mind and the anguish of the soul, it is most consoling to feel that resignation and confidence which comes from a realization that all is right and that you are master of yourself and at peace with God and man. This calm, optimistic, self-reliant philosophy is ever present with its consoling power in all Walt Whitman's work. And here we have a bit of a lot of Walt Whitman. So, the quote. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than one's self is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks in his own funeral, dressed in his shroud. And I or you, pocketless of a dime, may purchase the pick of the earth, and to glance with an eye or show a bean in its pod confounds the learning of all times. And there is no object so soft but to make a hub for the wheeled universe. And I say to many man or woman, let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. And I say to mankind, be not curious about God, for I who am curious about each am not curious about God. No array of terms can say how much I am at peace about God and about death. I hear and behold God in every object, yet understand God not in the least, nor do I understand who there can be more wonderful than myself. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God each hour of the 24 and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face, in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever. Well, Whitman doesn't make a lot of sense, if you ask me. And I digress. Anyhow, close quote. This is not the boasting of the ignorant egotist who wants himself above his fellow man, but the calm, conscious serenity of a great soul who has learned the patient philosophy of life. There is an egotism that is cheap and vulgar and born of ignorance alone. There is an egotism that comes from the knowledge that, after all, what we are depends not upon the estimate of the world, but upon the integrity and character of ourselves. This consciousness of individual worth brings that peace of soul which the world can neither give nor take away. And then I quote Walt Whitman. I know I am august. I do not trouble my spirit to vindicate myself or be understood. I see that the elementary laws never apologize. I reckon I behave no prouder than the level I plant my house by. After all, I exist as I am. That is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. One world is aware, and by far the largest to me, and that is myself. And whether I come to my own today or in 10,000 or 10 million years, I can cheerfully take it now, or with equal cheerfulness I can wait. My My foothold is Temend and mortised in granite. I laugh at what you call dissolution, and I know the amplitude of time. No idea what you're talking about there, Walt. Close quote. Happy is the man that has climbed to the height on which Walt Whitman stood. Walt Whitman was very fucking high, apparently. Happy is he that has mastered the haste and impatience of youth, and is content to bide his time. Happy is he that has so far solved the problem of life as to know that reward is not received from others and cannot be withheld by others, but can be given only by ourselves. Such a man has struck the subtle harmony which unites his soul with the universal life, and he knows that no one but himself can cut the cord. To a great mass of men and women, Walt Whitman is known almost alone by the portion of his work called Children of Adam. These poems have called forth the fiercest opposition and the bitterest denunciation, and if the common judgment is correct, they are obscene and vile. While this portion of his book is by far the smallest part, still, before the court of public opinion, he must stand or fall upon these lines. In one sense, public opinion is right, for unless these stanzas can be defended, his point of view is wrong, and Walt Whitman's work will die. We need not accept all he did, or give unstinted praise to all his work. But his thought and his point of view will determine the place he shall fill in art and life. It is in this work that the courage and personality of Whitman tower so high above every other man that ever wrote. It is easy for the essayist to speak in general terms and glittering phrases in defense of Whitman's work. His defenders have been many, but he alone has had the courage to speak. It is not difficult to insist that his A Woman Waits for Me is a tremendous work, and as pure as nature generates power. Still, perhaps few would dare to read it aloud in an assembly of men and women. If Whitman is right, the world is wrong. This poem, and others of its like, in plain words, deals of the deepest, strongest, most persistent feelings that move the sentient world. In proportion as they are deeper and stronger than any other, they should the more be the subject of thought and art. And still, ages of established convention have made the world pretend ignorance until no one dares defend his right to life but this brave and simple man. In both England and America, narrow interpretations of morality have almost stifled art, as remarked by a leading novelist. All our literature is added to the young addressed to the young schoolgirl. If it will not pass muster before her eyes, it has no right to live, and almost no English or American author has been great enough to rise above these narrow conventions and write the natural and true. The artists of conventional Europe have been less fettered and have taken us over a broader range and a wider field. Still, while these authors have told more of life, they have treated these tremendous subjects by drawing the curtain only a little way aside, and giving us a curious, perverted, half-stolen look, as if they knew that the picture was unholy, and therefore tempting to the gaze. But Walt Whitman approached the human body and the mysteries of life from an entirely different view. And apparently here's his view, because we have a quote. I quote Walt Whitman. If anything is sacred, the human body is sacred, and the glory and sweet of man is the token of manhood untainted. And in man or woman, a clean, strong, firm fibered body is more beautiful than the most beautiful face. Okie dokie, unquote, Walt Whitman. If Walt Whitman could have drawn the veil from the universe and shown us the living God in all his majesty and power, he would have approached his throne with no greater reverence than when he stripped the human body and pointed to its every part, fresh and sacred from its maker's hand. No true system of life and morals will exist until the holiest feelings and most potent and a bit of a ramble, isn't it? Most potent and eternal power is openly recognized and discussed with neither jest nor shame. Walt Whitman was the great bard of the democracy and equality, not simply the vulgar democracy of political rights and promiscuous familiarity, but the deep, broad, fundamental democracy that looks at all of nature and feels the unity and kinship that makes the universe a whole. To Walt Whitman, there could be no thought of class or caste. We're going to pause there because I'm getting caught now. So that means we need a hydration break. This hydration break is brought to you by my friend Maddie. Thank you, Maddie. Hydrate, my friend. Cottonmouth is the enemy of us all. Now, I digress. Each one held his certificate of birth from the same infinite power that, through all the ages and all the false and criminal distinctions of man, has yet decreed that all shall enter helpless and naked through the same gateway of birth. And each alike must go back to the fundamental mother, shorn of every distinction that man in his vainglorious pride has sought to make. Whitman placed the works of nature above the works of man. He had no faith in those laws and institutions which the world has ever made to defend and enslave, and deny the common brotherhood of all. He believed that every child that came upon the earth was legitimate, and had an equal right to land and sea and air, and all that nature made, and all that nature gave. Quoting Walt Whitman, each of us is inevitable, each of us limitless, each of us with his or her right upon the earth. Each of us allowed the eternal purports of the earth, each of us here as divinely as any is here. Let this stanza speak to our conscience face to face. Is it true or false? Can any but a blasphemer deny the divine right of every man upon the earth? And yet, if this simple stanza is true, every law book should be burned and every court abolished, and natural justice, unfettered and undenied, should be enthroned above the form and conventions and laws, which each and all deny the integrity of the soul and the equal rights of man. Through all the injustice and inequality of the world, the vision of democracy has still prevailed, and ever must prevail, as long as nature brings forth and takes back the master and the slave alike. But the aspiration for democracy is not always high and noble. It is easy to demand for ourselves the same rights enjoyed by our fellow men, but Whitman's democracy was on a higher plane. Quoting Walt Whitman, I speak the password primeval. I give the sign of democracies. By God, I will accept nothing which all cannot have their counterpart of on the same terms. Close quote. These lines breathe the spirit of true humanity, the spirit that will one day remove all barriers and restrictions and liberate the high, that would be me, and low alike. For nothing is truer in life or more inevitable in the economy of nature than this sage thought. Quoting Walt Whitman, whatever degrades another degrades me, and whatever is done or said returns at last to me. And we'll stop right there. That is the end of part 2 of Little Blue Book number 933. Whoops. There we go. Titled The Skeleton in the Closet. And apparently a love letter about Walt Whitman. Written by Clarence Darrow. Thanks for listening. And join me in part 3.